Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are shockingly talking back-to-back Bears victories, and we actually have Bulls basketball. They're not excluded from playing anymore. They're letting them play. So we will be talking that and more. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Sure, COVID has ruined the season, but they will be back. And you have the holidays coming up. So head on over to icehogs.com, pick out a hat, shirt, jersey, sign up for season tickets and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. All right, Chicago Bears. We got to win. I was absolutely shocked because I thought that this was going to be a fluke. The last win was going to be a fluke. And that wasn't the case. We saw, again, I don't think the Minnesota Vikings are world beaters by any stretch, but they were a team fighting for a playoff spot, and they were the next team to knock on the door should anybody falter. They would be the next team in line for making the playoffs. And the Bears went to Minnesota, and I get that the home field advantage this season, because no fans in the stadium, is not the same. But still, they went to Minnesota, and they won. And they looked, there was some really good moments.
Sean, I just want to share, before we get into I just want to share my overall feelings right now. It's going to be, I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, but I want to sum up some feelings here. And after I'm done sharing, I kind of want to see how you feel, if it's kind of more aligned with me, maybe not, but I'm just going to go for it. I don't want to take away credit where credit is due with this team the past few weeks. I think that having Bill Lazor call the plays, establishing the run early on, simplifying things when they should be simplified, and very importantly, playing to Mitch's strengths, has definitely made this team better. There is no doubt that this offense, the way it's played, is better now than it was weeks ago when Matt Nagy was still calling the plays and Nick Foles was in quarterback. And people can wonder what would have happened if they didn't stick with Nick Foles for so long. We could wonder that over and over and over. We'll never truly know. So I don't want to take away any credit here. But I'm just not buying it. I think that this team shows that they are competitive enough to beat teams equal to or less than them. They beat the Vikings. They beat the Texans. But I am not sitting here thinking that this is a playoff team. I feel it could be a little too late. I also feel that we're just beating teams that are not very good. And I think that if you play them these same teams the way they did a few weeks ago, you wouldn't have seen these results. I am not saying that it's all just because of who they're playing, but I think it makes the schedule and who they're playing makes me inside as a Bears fan say, I like what I'm seeing. I'm enjoying it. But I am not convinced that all of a sudden here are the answers. I'm not saying that we should keep Mitch next year, that, if you just do this, this, and this with Mitch, he's going to be really good. And, this team is a playoff team, and this is how you make this regime a contender. 2 weeks, despite the improvement, does not convince me. I maybe it's the Bears fan in me, seeing hopes get dashed year after year after year. But you know what would convince me? Is if you keep this up, and if you play a Packer team at home that has their starters in, if they have something to play for, that right there is a test for you right there. Because I want to see better in the sense of an actual contender. I just don't want to see better in sense of we can play well enough to beat bad teams. Because you can't argue that they're better than they were a few weeks ago. But I can't say that they're better enough, good enough to be legit. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, they blew a 10-point lead against the fucking Lions. And the Lions are bad. And your offense put up some points, but you didn't put up points really in the second half. You couldn't put that game away when you had multiple opportunities to. To me, if this team was for real, they would have blown out that Lions team. And, also, we're seeing some cracks in the defense.
Yeah, we are. So, if we just look at it quickly from the schedule perspective here, is week 1 win against the Lions. There was a lot of luck in there. The Lions that game.
Yes.
The second win against the Giants, that was a luck win because they had a lot of injuries that occurred to them. They
choked that.
And they almost lost it into a bad Giants team. They came back to beat the Falcons, which was the Falcons choking, as we've learned multiple times this season and previous seasons that the Falcons just choked.
They're the choke artists of the world.
Yeah, they're the new Lions. They got manhandled by the Colts. They came out and they beat the Buccaneers, but that Buccaneers team is weird because 1 week they look like the absolute most dominant team in the NFL, and the next week they look just like they've been wallowing in mud. And they didn't look good against the Bears. Then they won against the Panthers. And the Panthers are a bad team, just fired their GM. Then you got blown out by the Rams. You lost to the Saints, which is learning is not that good of a Saints team. They're above average, but
they're flawed. They're contenders, but they're flawed.
Yeah, we lost to them. We lost to the Titans. We looked terrible against the Vikings. We looked even worse against the Packers. We blew a big lead against the Lions. Sure, we looked good against Texans, but that Texans team is terrible. And then we beat the Vikings, but you're right, man. We've seen in between the Lions game, the Packers game, and this second Vikings game, we've seen a lot of cracks in that Bears defense. You're absolutely correct there. Is quarterbacks are getting their yards. Kirk Cousins threw for almost 300 yards. They moved the ball pretty seamlessly on a lot of times, and they've held strong towards the end, but teams have been able to move that ball up and down the field. You gave up 132 yards on the ground to Dalvin Cook, who's a guy who previous years you've held him to nothing, and you gave up almost 6 yards a carry to him. He gave up over 100 yards receiving to a rookie wide receiver. And
Sean, I'm going to ask this question really quick. If somehow all these changes are for the better in the long run, then we're going to be asking this question: why the hell did it take so long? I think that's going to be because, look, they can still make the playoffs, and I'm not guaranteeing they won't. I'm just not counting on it. But if you just miss the playoffs, but you see that there's some promise going forward here, we're going to be saying to ourselves, why the hell didn't this change sooner? Because you could possibly be one win away difference of making the playoffs in an NFL this year where you could take advantage of it.
I mean, the playoff picture it's weird. So the Bears are they're next in line for a playoff spot should somebody slip here. But I just don't see them being a playoff team. You look at the teams that are ahead of them. So the Packers, you're obviously not going to catch up to. Saints, you're not going to catch up to. Seahawks. So you're looking at. So it's probably going to be the Washington football team that wins that NFC East, I'm assuming. So it doesn't matter if you have a same or better record than them because they're going to win their division because that's arguably the worst division in a single year ever. Where the Eagles have 4 wins in week 15 and still have like a 20% chance of making the playoffs. That's how bad that is.
Yeah.
So then you're looking at the wild card teams that you're catching up to. The Rams, what are the Bears, 6-8?
They're 7-7.
7-7. Okay, 7-7. So there's no way they can catch the Rams. I guess theoretically they could catch the Buccaneers. So then it's catching.
Isn't it basically just the Cardinals at this point?
Yeah, it's really the Cardinals, and so you have to catch the Cardinals, and they're a good team.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles losing to them yesterday was obviously a big swing right there. If Arizona would have lost to the Eagles yesterday, the playoff scenario for the Bears would be a bit different, but as it stands right now, it's a little more difficult. I mean, the way I see it is if the Bears have a chance, they have to win out. They have to. I don't think they'll have much trouble against the Jaguars because they're now in position to get Trevor Lawrence, but I think it's just going to come down to beating Green Bay week 17, and I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, and I mean, so let's see, the tie-breaking.
I think the Bears have the tiebreaker over Arizona. I think.
So they haven't done head-to-head. I think then it's best won-loss percentage in games played within the division. So I'd have to look. But Arizona has 1 win more than the Bears. They're playing the 49ers next week, who are bad.
Yeah.
So, and then they play the Rams the last game of the season, who, I mean, it's a division game. That's a toss-up.
They just lost to the Jets, so.
Yeah, so it's a toss-up there because it's those NFC West games are just, I guess any interdivisional games are tough because you see the same team every year, twice a year. You know those teams. You're preparing for those teams better. You can watch your old film from earlier this season. They're different than playing a non-divisional opponent. So they're a little more crapshooty. But the Cardinals should win against the 49ers because that team's in shambles right now. And the Bears would need to win out. So that means the Bears would essentially have to beat the Packers to make the playoffs.
Yeah. And we'll see what the Packers do week 17, depending on what position they're in. Will they rest their starters or not? Will they have something to play for? That'll obviously be in question there. But, I mean, if you're just looking at this purely from playoffs, not actually how good they are, you're probably thinking to yourself, man, if you would have just not choked against Detroit a few weeks ago, But, again, you are where you are. But, I just think in the whole grand scheme of things, I am not ready to say that things are fixed or that the playoff race is on. You know what? If you're a Bears fan and you acknowledge, let's face it, this season has been weird. This has been a very weird season for the Bears. If you're a Bears fan and you want to remain hopeful and you want to be excited about playing meaningful football games at this point in the season, something we don't see the Bears do very much these days, I won't blame you for that. I won't criticize you for that. I mean, I'm just not getting my hopes up. What I am glad is that they're not phoning it in. They're clearly not phoning it in. Yeah, you choked epically against the Lions, but you just did it because you choked, not because you flat out stopped caring. And after just a brutal, devastating, possibly crushing loss in your season, you were able to come back and just dominate the Texans at home. Yeah, they're bad. And then you go on the road and beat the Vikings. Look, if this were the Bears era of Trestman or Fox, this team would have folded like that. I guarantee you. They would have just completely folded. They would have shut like a clam. But, this team, they're still playing very hard. They're still playing with energy. I think there is something to be said about that, and I can at least give them credit for that.
Looking at it, you said, do the Packers play their starters the final week? And I don't see it. There's probably very unlikely that they're not going to play their starters because they're only one game up on the Seahawks and one game up on the Saints for that first round bye. So the way the playoffs work this year, only one team gets the bye. And right now it's the Packers, and they're only one game up. So if the Seahawks or the Saints win next week, then really the Packers got to play that last game to essentially guarantee that they get that first overall position and not have to rely on another team losing. So Seahawks have the Rams, which could be a loss. I mean, the Rams, although they lost to the Jets, are still a good team. But the Saints have the Vikings. And, I mean, they very well probably will beat the Vikings. And that kind of forces the Packers.
We'll see.
That, sort of forces the Packers to have to play. But if the Rams beat the Seahawks and the Vikings beat the Saints, then yeah, the Packers sort of wrap this up. If they win, who are they playing this week?
I think they're playing Tennessee, so that's not going to be easy.
Packers schedule. Yeah, and they're playing the Titans. And so
it's not a gimme. It's not wrapped up here.
So I mean, the probably pretty low odds of not facing the Packers starters. Or
yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, so
really
we're gonna have to.
On that right now.
If the Bears are gonna make the playoffs, they're gonna have to win. But I mean, before we just dive into the game a little more, here's you can look at the positives of the things that the team, although we thought they were starting to give up and they may have given up in one game, they've come out and they've played, and you're seeing better play, and you're seeing life and a pulse on offense finally. But here's the thing. It is, so if you like the life that they have, you're like, okay, well then we keep Matt Nagy and we keep Bill Lazor. But this defense is really starting to show cracks. You're not getting production from the edge rushers. I mean, Khalil Mack, he's getting there, but you're that opposite side. It's Leonard Floyd. You couldn't get production out of him. So you went out and signed Robert Quinn, and you're not getting production out of him. You're giving up a lot.
So he was good this Sunday. I'll give him that.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of ability to run the ball on them, and you're not getting the most out of Eddie Jackson. So you're like, man, what's this defensive scheme? We probably need to replace Chuck Pagano. So
yeah, I think so too.
And then it goes, well, Ryan Pace has put you in a position where cap-wise you're not in a great spot, and you're not drafting well. You haven't solved the quarterback problem. In fact, you're still stuck in a quarterback problem, dead on, and you have a weird quarterback problem now that we'll talk about in a little bit. So Ryan Pace, like, almost as certainly has to go. So are you saying then you fire the general manager, hire a new general manager, keep the head coach and the offensive coordinator, and replace the defensive coordinator? Like,
that's a lot happening.
That is a probably an unprecedented position to be in, and I don't think that's how it works. I think if the stories are true and Ted Phillips is going to retire, I think then that's the domino that starts the whole thing, and they go, you know what? We might as well, nip this in the bud now and move on from Ryan Pace. And when your new general manager comes in, new head coach, new whole coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be... I still think that it might just lie on them making the playoffs or not. I think if they miss the playoffs, then I think the chances of big changes are pretty high. If they miss the playoffs, that could be different. I mean, you're probably looking at 3 straight non-losing seasons, but you know what? There really is no glory going 8-8 back-to-back years when you were supposed to be in a Super Bowl window. Looking back 2 years ago, you went 12-4, and you're thinking, well, we're still in the Super Bowl window. Having non-losing seasons is like a nice way of saying that you went 8-8. And again, there really is no glory of going 8-8 unless you're in a terrible division. You make the playoffs, but 8-8 is not going to get them there, and they're going to have to at least go 9-7, which is winning out. If they don't make the playoffs, that would be not making the playoffs for like the 8th time in 10 years. I mean, you can't keep going like that.
They're 7-7. They started 5-1.
Think about this for a second, Sean. Let's say the Bears don't make the playoffs this year, and this is if they don't. The past decade, you have had seasons where you've gone 7-1, 7-3, and 5-1. In all 3 of those seasons, you didn't make the playoffs. And I'm talking about 2011, 2012, and then maybe this year if they don't make the playoffs.
I would be shocked if they made the playoffs. They would need the Arizona Cardinals to belly flop, and they would have to beat the Packers in the final game of the season.
It's unlikely.
It's really unlikely.
I don't want to rain on anybody's parade who might have a more positive outlook, and they don't want to hear us spewing negative. But the chances are not there. It's not impossible, but it's not great. It's not great, and it's probably, like I said, it could be the very difference of one game, like that Detroit loss, or heck, if they would have had any sort of offense, you could almost. I mean, losing against Detroit was the most gut-wrenching loss, but I think a really big statement loss for you was the first one against the Vikings at Soldier Field. If you win that game, then I think things are a bit different. I don't know if you agree with that.
There's so many things that if they were different, we would be in a much different position here. And honestly, like if you look at things, Matt Nagy's offense has had a problem for 3 years, like since he's been here. And he's now finally turned over the reins to his offensive coordinator to make the play calls. And you're starting to see the offense look okay. Imagine if this offense looked like this in 2018.
You could be looking at a run to the Super Bowl.
And I know Bill Lazor wasn't here, but still, if you would have turned it over to your offensive coordinator to call the play calls like most other teams do, it seems that it was a problem with Matt Nagy's system. And I'm not saying this is a world beater offense by any stretch. This is a mediocre offense, but they're able to put up 30 points. They limited turnovers. They ran the ball efficiently, made passes when they needed to, and it was essentially Mitch has become a game manager. And I'm going to, I have alluded to it a little bit about we're in a terrible quarterback position because we have to make the decision of paying Mitch or drafting somebody and starting this whole process over, or being in the really uncomfortable position of doing both. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And here's the thing. Mitch has done some nice things, but I think Mitch at his absolute ceiling is Alex Smith. And that's being generous. But I'm saying that style of quarterback is Alex Smith doesn't, he's not Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to see him drop these giant bombs on 45-yard passes on people. But he has a little bit of leg, and not so much now that injuries, but he had a little bit of scramble ability. He managed the game, and he hit the passes he was supposed to hit, the short and medium ones. And I think that's the absolute max you could ever expect from Mitch. And I'm not saying he will hit that, but I'm saying that's where you're at. And now, because you didn't groom anybody, that's who you got. He's going to be a free agent. So you either got to pay him, or you're looking at Nick Foles being your quarterback next year.
Look. Honestly, the last thing I want to see is Nick Foles. And you know what? I was admittedly kind of liking the Nick Foles deal when it happened, but after what we saw, I think I liked Nick Foles because A, he's good at getting the ball out fast, and B, I remember that run he had in Philly to the Super Bowl and thinking that if he's with Matt Nagy in this system, things can work. But after what we saw, I don't want to see Nick Foles again. I really don't. Honestly, if I had a choice next year, if I had a choice of one more year of Mitch or Nick Foles, right now I'd say Mitch. I mean, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but we can't really. Let me pull up Over the Cap here and see what it would hurt to cut ties with Foles. Over the Cap.
Well, I think no matter what, Foles is going to be on the roster next year. He's going to be your backup because you're not going to have much of a choice, unless Philly says, "Hey, we'll bring him back."
They're not going to.
I know.
So, where are the Bears? There's the Bears. Always weirds me out on I love Over the Cap, but they organize the teams by alphabetical within their division, within their conference, and not just alphabetically. So sometimes you got to search around to find. So for 2021, Nick Foles counts. He's $6.67 million towards the cap. And if you cut him, he costs you money. So let's see. Here, 6.9. So yeah, it's based on a $176 million cap, which we know is going to be up. They were, if you keep Foles on your team, you have $6.94 million. Oh, you're over 6.9 over the cap, and if you cut him, you are 10.6 over the cap. So they can't really afford to cut him. Maybe if they do is a June 1st cut.
That's too much money to eat.
If it's a June 1st cut, you sort of split the difference and put it over 2 years. That's a possibility, but then you got to pay Mitch. What's Mitch going to cost? I don't know, man.
$4.
Like here, we're in the position that Ryan Pace has squarely put us into of we have no quarterback for next year that we are confident in, and we're longing for having Mitch one more year, but we don't. He's a free agent, and you're competing in the open market for him, and you're going to have to probably pay him multiple years, and you're stuck with Nick Foles financially, and you need to draft somebody. So, do you just bite the bullet? And I mean, I don't know how you can keep Ryan Pace in this job and trust him with a second rebuild when he didn't do a good job the first one.
I know. Basically, if you brought Mitch back in, you'd be saying that these last few games I don't think that's big enough of a sample size.
No, it's because you won a game against a bad Texans team and a mediocre Vikings team. Like that's your recipe for deciding to keep this whole regime. No, I mean, look at the
shouldn't be.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be.
Is Ryan Pace has not solved the quarterback issue. And, I've argued with several people online here where they're like, if we just fix the offensive line, we'll be fine. That's not the issue. You need to fix the offensive line, but here's the take on the offensive line. James Daniels will be back for next season. He was very good. I liked him. Sam Mustafar has, I think, solidified his, ability to play center, and they keep him. Like, he's going to be, he's your center. You move Cody Whitehair to the other guard, and where he's a much better guard than he is a center. So you've got your interior, and they're all young. So you've got those guys. You can lock them up for long term. You've got to figure out those two. Offensive tackle positions. That's where it's bad. But I'm not spending my first round pick on a tackle. Probably. You need to figure out this quarterback situation. Nick Foles is just not the answer, and Mitch Trubisky is a free agent. You need a quarterback. And the facts are, I went back and I looked, is 25 of the 32 starting quarterbacks on week 1 were picked in the top 36 picks in the draft. So the vast overwhelming majority are the top 36 picks. And you can throw me Tom Brady all day, but in our lifetimes, how many Tom Bradys have we seen that were drafted in the 6th round and became great?
Like outside Tom Brady, pretty much never.
Yeah. So that's hitting the lottery. So if you want to put your team's future in a lottery chance, there's Dak Prescott was a 4th rounder. What's his name in Seattle? Was it third rounder? Russell Wilson. I think he was a 3rd rounder.
Yeah, I believe he was a 3rd rounder.
Gardner Minshew was a 6th rounder, but he's not good. They're trying to replace him. So, the vast majority of the quarterbacks in the NFL on opening day were top 36 picks. For better or worse, you you have to expect to spend a first-round pick on a quarterback to be good. And that doesn't mean because you spend a first-round pick on a quarterback that it's going to be good, because there's not a very good hit rate on quarterbacks in the first round. But you start looking at your hit rate on quarterbacks after the first round, and it drops precipitously. So your second-round pick quarterbacks are especially after the very early part of the second round, because you got your Derek Carrs and players like that were drafted, I think first pick or second pick of the second round. Outside of those first handful of picks in the second round, your hit rate on quarterbacks in the second round drops a lot. And then your hit rate on quarterbacks in the third round and fourth round and fifth round, they just start dropping until you're in the sixth, seventh rounds, where it's just like, maybe you luck out and they're your third string quarterback. But they're not starters. They're not good. And so if you're the Bears team, yeah, you need to replace those tackles, but damn, you can't spend your first round pick on a tackle. It's just, you don't have that luxury unless you're planning to tank next season. Pick a tackle with your first round pick if there's a good one available, and it's hard to say what's going to be available. And all the first round graded tackles might be gone by the time you pick. But if there's a good tackle, do you draft a tackle and then go in the season with Tyler Bray and Nick Foles as your quarterbacks? Like, is that what you do? And then tank for a quarterback next season? That just sucks. That just wastes another year of the defense.
By the time you tank, your defense, which is, reacts to the coaching scheme, but it's this defense is whole. You got, and the NFL, a window is very fresh. You know that it's not going to last very long. It's football, so yeah, you would have to really be building on that end too.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at these quarterbacks or these teams here, so Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, Jets, all their quarterbacks top 36. Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos, Chargers. I think the Broncos quarterback, he might have been outside the top 36, but he's still in that range. I think he was a second round pick. Steelers, Browns, Ravens, Bengals, all top 36 picks. Titans, Colts, Texans, all top 36 picks. Jaguars not. NFC. I don't remember who the starting quarterback for the Redskins was. Cowboys was a fourth rounder. Giants and Eagles, nope, both first rounders. Seahawks third rounders. Rams, Cardinals, 49er. Jimmy Garoppolo was a second round pick. I think he might have been top 36. Packers, Bears, Lions, their quarterback's top 36. Vikings not. Saints, Falcons, Panthers top 36. Buccaneers not. So, clearly the vast majority. And when you look at the guys that weren't in the top 36, sure, you've got Tom Brady, but that doesn't really count. But you've got Gardner Minshew, Kirk Cousins, maybe the guy from the Broncos, whoever was starting for the Redskins, who's not going to be their quarterback next year. So like half of those names and the very limited numbers of guys that aren't top 36 picks, those guys, half of them aren't very good. So you need to solve this with a quarterback, and that's the facts. Unless you plan to bring Mitch back because you feel that he's a game manager and you can win with him, but it's not the long-term solution, I don't think.
No, I don't think so either.
And
But
according to the sorry, not to interrupt. According to the New York Times, based on their simulations of games, the Bears have a 33% chance of making the playoffs right now.
yeah, it sounds about right.
But if they beat the Jags, it goes up to 44%.
Which they should. They should beat the Jaguars.
But even if they were to win out, they're only a 62% chance of making the playoffs, even if they win out.
Yeah, they don't control their own destiny.
No. Nope, they do not. So, yeah. So they must not have the tiebreaker over Arizona.
I thought they did, but maybe I misread that.
Because if they win out, then it would be 100%. But yeah, and if they lose to the Jags, they're at an 8% chance of making the playoffs.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, I want to quickly go into this game a little bit. I don't want to go into individual plays and things like that because honestly, I missed the first half. It was my niece's 5th birthday, and we did a drive-by birthday party, but she lives way down south, so it was by the time we went down there and got back just in time for halftime. But Mitch, other than the really bad pass in the end zone that I don't know what he was thinking.
Yeah.
Other than that
was
like
awful.
You saw a competent game manager type game. He made some nice throws. But the thing was they ran the ball well. You gave David Montgomery an actual hole, and David Montgomery is one of the best in football at not going down on the first contact. He was like that in college. He's like that in the pros. But the problem is for the last season and first half of this season is you didn't give him that opportunity. He was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage. Now you're getting him a shot, and you're seeing positive yards even when he's getting hit. He's not going down in those arm tackles. He's taking a guy with him, and that's a recipe for success.
Yeah, we talked about establishing the run over and over, and they've been doing that very well because you saw both last week and this week, David Montgomery was able to get the touches early and be able to be effective with them. And in this game, it might be also due to Cordell Patterson being out for a little bit of it, but he actually got the ball throughout the whole game. It wasn't like the classic Matt Nagy, give him the ball early on in the game and then just go away from him. They kept pounding the ball with Dave Montgomery, and that was really nice to see. I was glad that they were able to do it pretty effectively even late in the game. We saw the Bears continue to falter a bit defensively, and the Vikings got back in the game, and they were able to put some drives together and eat up some clock, and they were able to continue to score. Now, you didn't get the first down when you stopped them on 4th, but you kicked a field goal, and you went up by 6 points, basically forcing a Hail Mary from Kirk Cousins. But, you continued to pound the ball. You didn't do anything too stupid outside. The Mitch pass was terrible for many reasons, but outside that one play, you played pretty smart. You were able to run effectively. And, the only thing maybe I would have done different is I maybe would have passed on 2nd down, and if you didn't get it, run on 3rd down when Mitch Trubisky got picked off. But, overall, I liked the game plan. I like the way they executed. Mitch threw some good balls outside the interception. And the one thing that I think is a little irritating is Mitch is very hesitant with his legs. And he did make one play work out. He could have easily ran for a first down, but he passed instead and he was able to hook up for a first down. But, that was one thing to note. But, overall, good game plan. They were able to keep scoring. And, man, Cairo Santos, what a boss.
Yeah, it's nice to have a kicking game again. It sucks that he's going to be a free agent, but we'll re-sign him. I think that's an easy decision there.
Easy.
But the running game, did David Montgomery ran really well, ran really hard, and
Career day, wasn't it?
yeah,
Career
yep,
in yards,
yep.
I believe.
131 was his previous, and he had 146. But 2 touchdowns, 146 yards rushing, very solid. The good thing there is David Montgomery ran 32 times, and Mitch Trubisky attempted 21 passes. Now we look back on previous early in the season and last season, and it was a much different story. It was Mitch passing 32 to 40 times and David Montgomery running 15, 16 times. It is, you're seeing a much better ratio, and you're seeing better results. You're seeing a lot less 3 and outs, and still this offense can just go flat real quick, and they don't have the big strike ability to make up for, penalties and sacks and holding calls and things where you're really in a bind, like the Patriots can, the Chiefs can, but when they're at their best is they're just constantly moving the chains. They're all plays are positive yards and limiting the negative plays, and that's how they're staying moving the ball. Establish the run game, pass, make it so you have when you're passing, you're not doing low percentage passes. It's higher percentage passes. Getting yourself in 3rd and shorts where you don't have to do low probability passes to get a first down. That's a winning recipe, and it's good to see that Bill Lazor was able to do this, and I think this is a big indictment on Matt Nagy, because why did it take so long for you to give it up? Your ego and pride got in the way of your job performance, and it's probably going to be what costs you your job.
Yeah, again, like I said, it's probably going to be too little too late. We'll see for sure in 2 weeks, but that's kind of what it feels like right now. But you know what? It's at the very least, the last 2 weeks have been entertaining to watch, even if there is frustration on the position of the team in the future and all that. At least it's fun to watch them put up some points. I think it's fun watching Dave Montgomery run everywhere. I mean, that's been my favorite thing to watch, is watch him play the past few weeks and rack up 100+ yards and get in the end zone. That has been just a blast to watch. So at the very least, we've had that. I really did enjoy, as much as the defense irritated me this week, I really did enjoy those 2 stops on like 4th and 1. That second attempt where Kirk Cousins was just chased back like 20 yards and he just had to heave it and it was nowhere close to being complete. That was great.
Yeah, it's nice. You saw Jalen Johnson be out, and you brought in Duke Shelley and Vildor, who are both young players. You saw a few positive things out of them. For the most part, other than Jefferson, the cornerback play wasn't that bad. Let's see. Is the tight end? The tight end had some big yards, but Beebe and Thielen, your other 2 weapons on wide receiver, you held them to a combined 32 yards. It was Jefferson, and there was some big plays in there.
I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's maybe my meatball mind or I'm not watching close enough. Does Eddie Jackson just look bad right now?
I think it's whatever scheme that they're running. It just it doesn't optimize what he does. It's frustrating. I want to see, that's part of the reason I want to see a complete turnover of everybody, because I know this won't happen, but I would love to see Vic Fangio back. in that defensive coordinator role. Man, that would.
Oh, me too.
Like if you could hit the reset button with a new GM, he brings in a new head coach and Vic Fangio back at the helm of the defense, and you're going to see some ass whooping going on again. Unleashing Khalil Mack, Eddie Jackson back looking great.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there, and I liked the Chuck Pagano hiring when it happened, but I just don't think the scheme is going to be the scheme is going to be working in the future, because we are seeing some cracks in it, and it's just like you said, it's not optimizing the defense the way it should be.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some positives on this team, and you know, looking at this Bears job is, I've heard some people say the Bears job is not that desirable because they don't have a high pick and they don't have a quarterback. And they don't have a ton of money to throw at those problems. And while I agree to some degree, is look at some of the openings they have. Like, all right, well, Detroit has a quarterback, but they don't have a lot of money, and they're not going to have a terribly high draft pick. And does that make it a desirable job? They have a long history of losing as well, a much bigger history than the Bears, and that quarterback is old, and they turn people over so much. I don't see how that's a super desirable job. You know, Atlanta, they've got an old quarterback too and financial problems. You know, like, which of these jobs is like super desirable?
Nah.
I'm looking by T. So the Jets have a lot of money and they have a top draft pick, but that's just a garbage dumpster fire team. Cowboys are sticking with their people. Eagles aren't going anywhere. Washington, no. Patriots, no. I mean, then you start going into the Colts. Let's see. I'm looking at salary cap space here. Jaguars, they have a lot of space. They just have a new regime. Jets, probably, but they've got a high draft pick and a lot of money, but that's a dumpster fire team. Colts not going anywhere. Patriots not going anywhere. Washington's a new regime. Bengals aren't going anywhere. The Chargers have their quarterback and they've got a solid amount of money. So maybe the Chargers is a decent job. Dolphins, Bucks, Ravens not going anywhere. Browns, Cardinals, Cowboys not going anywhere. You know, so I don't know which of these jobs are just so desirable. The Texans job is opening. You have your quarterback solved, but you're in cap space hell because based on estimates for the cap, like, you're $12 million over the cap. So you got to make cuts in order to build, and your team was terrible this year. Like, your offensive line is terrible. You can't run the ball. Your defense is porous. So, like, I just don't understand why the Bears media is saying the Bears job is so undesirable. I think there would be a ton of people jumping at that job, especially considering there's only 32 openings for this job in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there will be people who would want it. I do.
Yeah, the Falcons have a quarterback, but they don't. But they're also $30 million over the cap. So they're going to have to make drastic cuts just to make the salary cap situation. And the Saints, as it stands right now, are $94 million over the salary cap. $94 million over the cap.
Yikes.
Eagles are $70 million over the cap. So yeah, so I don't know what the salary cap's going to be for 20. Oh wait, so the salary cap will have a floor of 175 million. Um, da, da, da. Yeah, I don't know what the salary cap's going to be, but they said it's being a floor of 175. And if that's the case, that's bad for a lot of teams. So it's looking like it'll be 176. So if that's the case, then yeah, the Bears not in a good position. And even if you make some pretty big cuts with moving on from Leno, Graham, Massey, and Buster Screen, and not re-signing Allen Robinson and Mitchell Trubisky, you have $14 million in space.
Yeah.
So
Not great.
Not great at all. But for 2022, they've got $112 million in space.
Oh, that's nice.
Alex, we have a very special guest on the phone today, don't we?
Yes, we do. And it is one of my close compadres. And just a little background before we get to the details. Loyal listener to the show. He's listened to our show for a while, and he's always talking about it with me. So we're very happy to have him aboard. My personal friend, John Rushi, is going to be on this show, and he and I have known each other since pretty much day one of freshman year of our college experience, all the way back to 2012. And when we did radio together, he was my manager, my student manager for our very first sports show, which I hosted with a fellow named Chris. So we have been doing this kind of thing for a while now. So it's really good to be talking to John again over a podcast. John, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we're very, very happy to have you on. And I know you've wanted to talk Bulls with us for a while. And what better time to do it than right before the season? Because the season is finally about to start. Preseason is over. We have an idea of what the roster is going to look like. We have pretty much an idea of where we are as a team, knowing that we are in a new regime in year one of a transition, knowing that we have a ways to go, but this is a great opportunity for this team to truly build a real winning identity with this new regime. And Sean, I think I could speak for you that we're both looking at this upcoming season not exactly prepared to win, but prepared to see strides taken forward. That's probably fair, right?
I think it's fair.
So, John, I understand you have some questions you'd like to ask Sean and I. So please fire away. We'd love to answer them.
All right. So my first question, I don't want to throw it just breaking as of like 2 hours ago. I don't know if you saw the report, but the extension talks between Markkanen and the Bulls, they got basically nixed right now. Mm-hmm. So what do you guys think of that? I'm just curious, like immediate hot takes on that.
I mean, in my opinion, not that shocking. I think Markkanen could very well be an important piece for this team if they are to do well in the near future. But the issue is, how do you properly evaluate him in order to pay him? Because you've had some really good, you've had some moments where you're like, I see a lot of potential there. but then you've seen some moments where it's just complete disaster, and you've had a lot of injuries. So I can see where he wants to get paid, and the Bulls are like, we can't just throw money at you in a big contract when you haven't proved anything yet. And it's a tough spot for this organization because they have to make a decision so quickly with the new regime, and they don't have much time where they've got to evaluate him under their system.
Yeah,
Sean,
that's kind of my immediate reaction to seeing it as well. I think it's interesting because looking at the projection for the 2021 free agency class, the biggest news out of that has been that the big names are off the table right now, and it's shaping up to be, I believe it was the 2016 class where you had those just insane contracts thrown around, where the cap went up, and like Noah got a crazy contract, Rose got crazy contracts. There was a report that that's what this offseason might shape up to be, and so I think that's the fear that the Bulls have, is that the market for Lowry, as far as like what he is asking for, is going to be too high for them to match it. Alex, I don't know, do you have thoughts on that? Or
Well, my whole thought on marketing is I truly believe this year is going to be make or break for him, because as Sean pointed out, while you saw the potential early on, you saw the injuries, you saw the inconsistency, and you just didn't see him develop into the player you thought you'd see. But, at the same time, playing under Jimbo and Fred Hoiberg, I don't think did him any favors. So I'm frankly kind of glad that they're not just going to jump and go ahead and give him a bunch of money that may or may not be earned. Remember, Garpax, they are not in charge anymore. This is AK in charge, and I think he's much smarter and is going to have to be much smarter with money. But, I think this truly is make or break for him this year with the Bulls. If he shows big strides, I think the confidence in him and in the fans and in the coaching and the front office will be much higher on his future, knowing that he would at least have taken strides in a new functioning regime. So I'm glad that they're not jumping the gun on this.
Yeah,
I think
it's he's going to only be a restricted agent, free agent. So
right,
they get the whole year to evaluate him under Billy Donovan's system, under their watchful eyes, see how he progresses, and make a decision. And sure, if he looks better than he did the last couple of seasons, you're probably going to have to pay him more money than you did had you agreed to a contract now. But I think it's better to pay a little bit more with a guarantee, with a better idea of what you're getting, rather than sort of blindly give him a contract and then be locked into it. Cough, Felicio, cough.
Exactly. I think Alex, you hit the nail on the head. For me, this whole off season, it's not been an off season like we've had in the past, where that there's going to be stupid money paid to guys that don't deserve it because of loyalty.
Right.
And I don't think between the moment they came in to now, AK has done anything to make us doubt his ability as a GM. I don't think there's been any dumb decisions, no matter what the reactions might have been on draft night to that Patrick Williams pick, that would cause me to question his ability as a GM. So, and Sean, you hit it. How do we evaluate? How do we evaluate what we've seen from guys like Wendell, guys like Lowry, who've never played in a system that's not been that Hoiberg/Jimbo regime and the buffoonery that was going on there?
Yeah. You think about it, and you think about all those silly, weird things that happened under Jimbo. That was just the tip of the iceberg. You actually look at the whole regime as a whole. And you saw the frustration on the faces of the players themselves, because it was pretty clear that not only did they trust Jim Boylan in coaching the small things, but just how they were implemented in the system. I mean, you could see how frustrated and discombobulated everything was.
Mm-hmm.
It's a breath of fresh air to us to have a new coach, but to these players, I can't even imagine how they feel. The ones actually on the court saying, here is an actual coach, an actual man with a plan and a system in a regime that has a plan of vision and a system going forward, that this is actually real. And, I'm glad that the Bulls didn't, we knew they weren't going to make a ton of moves, because even if you make one or two semi-big moves, you'd be making moves just to slightly improve. You weren't going to make this a championship roster. So use this first year to develop what you have, and then that can give you a better sense going forward of what you have. Then you could start thinking about moves, trades, signings, whatever. I think it's the perfect opportunity to see what you have in a real regime.
Yeah.
I
agree. I think
it's a tough position to be in, having to make a contract move on what could potentially be a core piece based on a sketchy track record, and during the COVID season when you couldn't play, you were limited in your practices, and finally just a couple weeks into getting practices going and games going, having to make that decision. It's just a tough predicament for AK to be in.
Yeah. Like I said, I want to give them all of the the benefit of the doubt right now, because we don't know, and this whole year is going to be wonky. I mean, you're shortening the season by 10 games. You're going to have back-to-backs on a regular basis. You're going to have games that get canceled, games that get moved around, all of these things. And Sean, like you said, if Lowry balls out, I'm okay with paying a little bit more, given a certainty, versus paying for something that might not be there right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that risk of injury with him, but at least you have that year of your medical people giving you the firsthand information. You have a year of Billy Donovan coaching him up, and you being in there and seeing how he is with this new system and how is he going to perform. And you feel a lot more confident, because if after that year you're like, all right, this is sort of the make it or break it year, and you see, oh, hey, look, he's really turning things around. We're seeing a lot of good things out of him. You feel comfortable paying him. And if he's still having the same struggles that he had under Boylan, where he can't get in the groove, he's constantly injured, then you're like, all right, well, you know what? Let's move on and use that money elsewhere. But I have a feeling that they're going to sign him in some fashion or another, because here's the thing. When what they expected was the big free agency class opens up, they're going to have a ton of money, and there's really nobody to throw that money at this point, because guys are signing extensions. So you're going to have to hit that salary cap floor. They're going to have to throw the money at somebody.
Well, I do have another question, and you mentioned the 2021 free agency class. I don't think it's as bad as people want to make it out to be. I get that, like, the big fish is not on the market anymore, with Giannis's extension, even Paul George's extension. Although I'm not convinced they're not going to do like they did Blake Griffin and extend him just to trade him further down the line, because Kawhi's got that player option this year, and apparently the chemistry there is a nightmare. But looking at that 2021 free agency class, who in that class do you think is a good fit for the Bulls to kind of throw that money at? I've got a couple names that stand out to me, but I want to hear your guys' take on that.
Oh, geez.
If you need time to look it up, I can throw mine out.
Yeah, I mean,
there.
So we got James Harden, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Kemba Walker, Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal. Well, those aren't. Those are player options, so they might not even be. But I'm looking at UFAs, and you got Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Kawhi, Blake, Drew Holiday, Gary Harris, Julius Randle, Aaron Gordon, Zach LaVine, Goran Dragic, Ricky Rubio, Andre Iguodala, Thaddeus Young. He'll be a free agent. Marcus Smart. I mean, you know, I could tell you right off the bat, I don't see James Harden coming here, obviously. But again, it's a player option. We'll see what even happens with that situation. Who the heck knows what's going to happen right now?
The biggest winner of that Giannis signing, because now Houston gets to force do with that trade.
Yeah.
Looking at that free agency class, I think, having watched not any full games of the Bulls living out of market right now, but watching the highlights from the last couple games and some of the play and hearing, reading recaps and everything, people, even going into the offseason, people were saying that they need another option at point guard. I think you guys even mentioned that, looking for a veteran point guard. And I know, Alex, that Jay mentioned it on his pod. And there's one name that stands out to me on this list of unrestricted free agents.
Is it a familiar name?
That I think, to the Bulls? No.
Oh, I thought you were going to allude to Derrick Rose.
Oh, there is that part of me that wants to see him resign, but I don't necessarily want him to get meaningful minutes. And I don't know how comfortable he is taking on he says he's comfortable taking on that that kind of coaching role right now. He's alluded as much with his role in Detroit right now. So, who knows if he seems to thrive at that, scratch that from the record. Let's throw, whatever at him and bring him back home. But I was actually thinking Mike Conley as that kind of, I almost want to say starting point guard to then have Kobe come in and finish games almost. Conley's great. He played on those grit and grind Grizzlies. I know he's not been doing well in Utah, just with the change in that system. But you look at the teams that he led to the playoffs, where he was, no one on those teams really is what you would consider a superstar talent. And I love Marc Gasol, but Marc Gasol is not, your best player on the court at any moment. Zebo and Tony Allen, those guys on that court, he's, Conley's elevating that team. I don't know what his asking price is going to be as far as contract-wise, if Utah maybe likes something, what he brings into the locker room. So that's my unrestricted free agent. The other one in that class, like you said, Rose, there's Lowry, but I think Toronto is going to just throw the bag at him. I mean,
yeah, I think so too.
But the other, I'll give a restricted free agent at that point guard position. Another guy who just kind of tabled that talk with his team is Lonzo Ball.
That's the name I was going to toss out. I like Lonzo Ball. I mean,
I love the kid.
It's I think, I mean, not to interrupt you here, but here's what I see is I love Kobe White, but it's and you sort of it's a weird predicament the way the Bulls are built right now. Is I think they can put 5 good guys out there that can play, but the question is when they go to the second team, who scores points?
Right.
And that's why I like Kobe White playing that 2 guard on the second team where he's that consistent scorer, and you don't need as many balls with Zach LaVine on the court at the same time. I like that, and Lonzo Ball allows you to have him on the starting unit with Zach LaVine. I think you get better defensive value. You get more ball movement, less, me guys, and then you could put your second team point guard out there with Kobe White being your scoring guard, and I think it leads to more consistent scoring with that second unit. I think ultimately that's the smarter move. I like Derrick Rose, and I thought he could be, a fit with that second unit there too, as a secondary scorer point guard. And obviously the Bulls have the money to sign both guys if they wanted to,
Right.
and move Kobe White to that more of that 2 guard. But I love that Lonzo Ball idea. I like that a lot.
And,
John,
and
I had a
not to-
feeling you'd bring up Lonzo Ball. I know he's your guy. I had a feeling you'd bring him up, but I wanted you to say that in all your glory.
I want him to succeed. I've been high on him since watching him play that first year at UCLA. I don't understand why people dislike him because of his dad.
I think it's because of his dad. Yeah.
Alex, I always tell you, my dad's a jerk at times. I would hate if people hated me because of him. I love my dad to death, by the way. Don't let that be like, oh, like my dad's a jerk. But all dads are jerks at times.
It's that. The thing
I
is,
can't wait to-
the level of the platform and level of jerk that Lonzo's dad is. That
Right.
it's like,
Right.
my dad, before he passed, could have been a real jerk too, but nobody gave him a platform. If you put a microphone in front of his face,
Exactly.
everybody would hate me. He's like, your dad's a turd, man. But nobody, everyone's just like, that's just old man Hotman over there. And you just tuned him out. With Lonzo's dad, it's like everybody's like, oh, what's he going to say next? Here's a microphone.
He's like, you got to treat him like a wasp. You don't bother him, he'll go away. Like, just don't feed the troll. Stop giving the guy attention.
Right. And I think the thing is, Sean, like you said, is just that there was a microphone there for him to talk into every time. And I'm not going to fault the guy because I think he ultimately was trying to make sure his kids were well off. I applaud him for that. But I think that if you put Lonzo on that Bulls team running the point for that first squad, let's sub him out for Kobe, given the lineup as it stands right now. We'll go with the lineup Donovan throughout there for the Thunder game, game 3 preseason game. Sub him out for Kobe. With LaVine at the 2, you've got Pat Will at the 3, and then Lowry and Wendell. That's a good team. To me, at least, that is a team that you can compete with. You might not win a championship, but you can at least make a case for not being an automatic dub on someone else's schedule.
Yeah, I think you're going to get that not automatic W on somebody's schedule with just the regime change and having got like a real head coach and have guys prepared to play and with a winning scheme. I think you're going to get, you're going to actually be a lot more competitive. And you saw when, I've watched a decent chunk of the preseason, and man, when this team is hitting their shots, they're tough to beat.
Oh,
and it's it's finding that consistency and things like that. But adding legitimate player, and is Lonzo Ball an elite player? No, but is he a player that I think fits in with what this team has at their core and what they're trying to do? Oh yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of anything where anybody has anything bad to say about Lonzo himself. It's all his dad. But you know what?
Yeah.
Is now that he's got 2 sons in the NBA, you only get 50% of the loudness.
Right. Well, and the only knock I have on Lonzo is he can't shoot free throws. But I mean, he's got more songs on Spotify than made free throws. So, but I mean, they're good songs. I'll give him that. Like half good songs. He's got about a 50% rate. But I mean, I guess you mentioned the second team, and we saw that with Donovan changing up the lineups, putting Otto on that second team to be that spark plug in that role, and you had Hutch taking on that spark plug role there too in this Oklahoma City series. I guess we're gonna call them series. Does Otto moving to a bench role speak to what the movements might be as far as his status on the team? As we're looking into the 2021 free agency, is he even on the team, or is he a trade deadline swap for a pick and a future player, or a young and upcoming player kind of thing?
Honestly, I think that depends on what the Bulls look like. If they're competing, I mean, I don't know what the market is going to be to what you're going to get for him. If it's not that much, and you're saving, if you're going to trade him as a expiring contract, and you're not going to get that much for him, and you're actually in the hunt for a playoff spot, then I mean, I wouldn't see why you wouldn't just keep him. But if you're out of it and you can save that money and bring in a pick, which who knows what that's going to be. I don't know what the trade market's going to look like. Then of course you do it. But I mean, right now, with how good Patrick Williams looks like he could be, what does Otto bring to this team other than helping you hit the salary cap floor?
And maybe COVID. I mean,
and a beer belly.
It's hard to, because I'll defend the criticism of James Harden being that, he likes to go out clubbing. He's a grown adult. Let him do what he wants in his free time. I mean, Jordan went and gambled until whatever it was, 5 a.m, and showed up drunk and balled out. Like, who are we to say what these guys can and can't do? But Jordan wasn't going gambling in a pandemic. Harden, well, he actually has. Never mind. He did go out clubbing in the pandemic. But that video of Otto from Halloween, I don't know how you don't, as a team in this climate right now, go, dude, you can't. Like, you just can't. And that's a concern for me for the long run, because we're not in a bubble. We're going to be traveling. Players are going to be at home. He's already shown that given an inch, he takes a mile. Does he put more at risk during the regular season, or am I just being a pearl clutcher?
Here, I mean, it's not. For me, it's not a invalid criticism, but he wasn't playing. Sure, it was a bad decision, no matter what, but he wasn't playing. He wasn't risking anybody but his loved ones, and which is a dick move anyway. But as far as the team goes, I think he's realized that his contract is coming up, and if he wants to get paid again, he's got to put up. And this is a different regime here. And he can't just, do whatever it is that he's been doing on this team and have it be acceptable. There's expectations of him, and I think part of, I think putting him on the second unit was, I think there's a lot of psychology behind it. I think it was legit. Like, let's see what Pat Williams can do with the first team, and to reward him for his efforts, and also to see you know, how the different lineup dynamics can, you know, work on this team
Right.
with a new head coach that's had very little time to work with the team. So all those things are in play, but I also think it's a message saying, you know what, you just because you're high paid does not mean you get a starting spot. Is this 19-year-old kid is just supplanted you, and you know, you've got to earn your time to play.
And it seems like every passing second, he's looking more and more promising. You know, there was when he was drafted, there was a lot of people going, "Oh, really? Patrick Williams is high?" But then other people were saying, "Oh, watch out for this kid." But actually seeing him in action, I think a lot of us are looking at it and saying, you know, I see potential here.
Alex, you remember? So we, you know, we were FaceTiming during the draft. Do you remember what I said shortly after the pick?
You'd have to remind me.
So I was shocked at first. I was
Right.
a little surprised because I hadn't heard his name that high.
As many
And-
people were.
Right. Everyone was kind of like, "Oh, okay." And Keller was like, "Oh, John doesn't like it." I'm like, "I'm not saying I don't like it. I don't like it, but I'm just curious." About 10 minutes later, I saw a report from Kevin O'Connor at The Ringer that the Spurs were interested in Patrick Williams and were hoping he would fall because he's a pop guy.
Mm.
And granted, my favorite player of all time was not a Popovich guy, Dennis Rodman. But if Greg Popovich likes you, there's something right there. The guy knows talent. The guy has not been a bad GM, a bad assessor of talent ever. And I think that once I read that, I was like, okay, I'm feeling confident about it. And then you just see how he plays. I'm not going to go full on Stacey King and call him Baby Kawhi. But there's a lot of that reminds me of a Kawhi Leonard or a Luol Deng kind of defensive prowess that he has.
When I was
And,
watching,
you mentioned both of that.
when I watched him play, I was like, man, he reminds me of like a Jimmy Butler, like a young Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I do remember you mentioning that now. It's funny because when the pick was made, I think your reaction was kind of on the same level as most people's, where they were saying, I'm not going to trash it. I'm just a little surprised. I'm scratching my head a little bit. But as you know, just as the night went on, the more and more people read about him and saw the justification of the pick, people started to buy it in a little more. Now, granted, when a guy like Arturas Karnisovas makes this kind of pick, you're kind of more inclined to say trust the process just because of his resume of evaluating talent. But you actually saw some of the attributes that he brings, and you're like, you know, I can see this now.
Yeah, you know, when I didn't watch any college basketball the past season. You know, I didn't watch any. I usually don't start watching it until the end, and at that point, it was pretty much getting canceled. So it was like, okay.
Right.
So I was not familiar with him at all. He wasn't on my radar, and which is fine because as far as this draft went, I was a casual observer, and so when I was watching the draft, I was listening to Hot Mic with the Bulls Outsiders folks, and they were all just like, listen, like, you know, the same things that you said, John, is that the Spurs were high on him, and a lot of GMs were saying that he was shooting up the draft boards, and I watched the highlights of just how, like, he looked like a grown man as a 19-year-old.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? AK has given me absolutely zero reason to question his abilities. Had Garpax done this, I would have been trashing it without knowing anything. I'd have just been trashing it.
Of course.
But I was like, you know what? I'm going to trust in AK until he gives me reason not to trust him. And
Right.
I've, in the preseason so far, sure, you've seen some young player mistakes, like some biting bad on some pump fakes, but man, the athleticism and the defensive prowess, the kid knows the game of basketball. You could just see it. It's not just being athletic. It is, he knows basketball. And I think, I don't know what his ceiling is, but I know what I can see what his floor is going to be, and his floor is real high.
Right. I've not been this high on a Bulls draft pick since Tony Snell. I'm not even joking. I wish I was. I really like the Tony Snell pick. And
I'm pretty sure I called him Tony Smell, but that's neither here or there.
But no, I think he's got a lot of athletic upside. If he never hits his ceiling, his floor is still high enough that maybe he's not a number 4 pick, but he's going to have a serviceable, really good NBA career. And I think Sean, as you mentioned, like if this was Garpax, Garpax is basically the episode of The Simpsons where Homer looks at the thing and it says, "Do the opposite of what the boy says."
Yeah,
that's Garpax. Just do the opposite of what Garpax says.
That's so true.
Yeah, it's when you start off your career in your first draft in any sport, when you're the new president, general manager, whatever, front office, and you look at their tenure, one of the first markers you look at is how many championships did they win, and then one of the second is what did their draft picks look like? Let's look at the first draft, and you look at this one, and even if he doesn't end up being a superstar, unless he has some crazy injuries where he's riding around on his motorcycle and has an injury, or suffers 2 major knee injuries, or whatever else Bulls injuries that we have history of. If this guy just
throws his back out sneezing, like
Sammy, as long as he's healthy, I don't see him not being a very good NBA player. And when you start looking at whoever else is in this draft, and when you look at a draft, and you never knock somebody for picking a player that has a solid career, you look at the players or the teams that picked busts, and there are some guys that all the names that we were throwing out that this is a guy the Bulls could pick. This is a guy the Bulls could pick. The kid, the Israeli kid, Denny. I can't pronounce his last name. Like, you're like, oh man, I see a lot of good things out of him, but that's a high potential for a bust coming, with a skinny, tall kid from Europe. That's a high risk.
Could be Darko 2.0.
Yeah, and it's, I think a lot of times in the NBA, it's sure you want to pick the guy who's going to have the highest ceiling, but you also want to maximize, minimize your risk of having a flop.
Right. It's not like AK was out there saying we're going to draft a quarterback every draft and then waits 5 years to draft a quarterback.
Yeah, no kidding.
I was waiting for Alex to.
That one hits harder for me. Is I'm 43 and my whole life has been nothing but a running joke of Bears quarterbacks.
But Trubisky's going to play himself into a great contract. So, but you guys didn't bring me out here for Bears talk. So, we talked about Lowry and what we want to see in his improvement. Wendell, what are we looking for as far as his development? One of the things that personally I want to see him do is more stretching the floor. In college, he was, let me pull it up. I had it. I think he was around a 33% 3-point shot. And so far in his career, he, at the NBA level, I undersold him. He was a 41% 3-point shooter. So far, he's only taken, I think it was like 62 shots from behind the arc in his NBA career. In 87 games, 60, it's about one per game. I personally, I want to see him continue to take more shots like that. Just trying to stretch the floor a little bit. And if they hit, great. If they don't, then I'm wrong and have him crash. But I think that if he stretches the floor, I go back to that report from, I think it was September, where Bam Adebayo was talking about how he owes Jimmy Butler $500 for every game he doesn't take a three. Something like that for Wendell to stretch the floor a little, to space it out. And if Lowry can't hit his deep shot, open up the middle there, for him to kind of play that almost Joker slash Chris Tapps role of kind of be the quarterback from the center of the floor, and to do that, Wendell's got to get out. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts about Wendell in the next season? What you want to see from him, or am I crazy to think that I want him to shoot more threes at his current percentage? Or
I think that's Billy Donovan's idea as well. What's he been shooting averaging like 4 3-pointers a game? Attempts.
In the preseason?
Yeah, in the preseason, I think he's averaging 4. He hasn't had any less than 3 in any of the games. So he has taken more noticeable 3-point shots. I want to make sure, I want to see him grow as a defender. I want to see this Bulls team, be able to play some defense. And going back to your Lonzo Ball situation, he's a good defender. I like that. I think this team needs some better defenders because Zach's a terrible defender.
Is he statistically like one of the worst defenders in basketball?
I think James Harden might be the quintessential non-defender. But yeah, Levine's got to be towards the bottom of that list.
Yeah.
And I want to see. I don't think you're ever going to see this team be an elite defensive team as a whole with this core. But if you add a few pieces here and there, like I think Wendell has the potential to be a much better defender down low. And Patrick Williams is a good defender. I think you can be a better, with a couple of good defensive players and a better defensive scheme. I think you can be a decent defensive team, but I want to see Wendell, work on the glass and become a little bit better defender. If he does, shoot more, I'm okay with that. This has become a 3-point shooting league, and big men shooting threes is and shooting threes well is good. So I think that's important to be able for him to be able to hit those shots. This adding that, I guess arsenal of having a big man that can shoot from the outside is makes this team a little more formidable. So, I think there's a lot. I don't think he's a terrible player. I think he just needs to find his niche and work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sean, I hear you. I think he's got to really find his true identity. I still like him more on the inside, but if he can find a niche wherever it is and stick with it, then that's really what's important. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not out on him. I'm not out on Lowry either. I don't want to dog on him at all, but I think that we need to see improvements, and And those are two of the guys, especially that I give a lot of leniency to as far as what we're hoping to see from them, given that they've not had an opportunity to show what they can do while managed by a competent coach.
I mean, honestly, I don't dog on anybody.
Kobe in theirs. No, and I hope that's not what I was trying to get across there. There's some guys I think we know who they're going to be, but
I'm not counting on Cristiano Felicio to be much for the team.
Right. Kind of those players like Felicio who we kind of know who they are. But Wendell, Kobe, Lowry, even Zach, young guys that we can see a huge improvement from if managed appropriately and not having to waste time with leadership committee meetings and running wind sprints in practice.
Boy.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be interesting because, Marketing clearly hasn't hit his ceiling. Just clearly, Wendell has not hit his ceiling. Patrick Williams, obviously.
Kobe White hasn't hit his ceiling.
Has Zach LaVine hit his ceiling? Do we know exactly who he is, or does he have another level in his game?
I know if this is his ceiling, I still don't think this is a bad ceiling to have. This is a guy that allegedly drew interest from the Warriors on draft night. I don't think it's a bad ceiling to have. I would love to see him take another step. What he's in his. This is going to be his year. He's going to be 27 this year, right?
Sounds about right.
It's kind of the beginning of quote prime for an athlete. He's going to be 20. He's going to be 26 in March. So, I think he's still young enough that he can make that next leap.
I mean, not to compare his game to Jimmy Butler. It's clearly not the same game. But as far as the level is, we saw end of the Bulls Jimmy, and you were like, okay, this is a good player. And then you saw him move on, and you're like, okay, he's a really good player. But it was always like a fringe all-star level. You're like, okay, this is a good player, and he finally took that next step into being a really, really good player. And I mean, I think you're right that if this is Zach's ceiling, it is not a bad ceiling at all. But I wonder, my concern is if this is his ceiling, is his ceiling good enough to build around him?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it you take that chance to move on from him and find that building block piece? And if he's got a next level, then I think he is a building block. He's a very good player. But if you can't win a championship with him being one of your star players, then that defeats the purpose. The purpose is to win a title. Mm-hmm. And I think for him, he's never going to be an elite defender. He's never even going to be a very good defender, I don't think. But I think for him, if he can be a much more consistent scorer and shooter, then that suddenly elevates his game.
Right. Yeah, I think you got right there. If he can be, I think realistically the height of his defense is going to be a guy that you don't have to hide. A guy that's not a liability defensively for him is kind of, I think, the peak. And if he can become a consistent scorer with that, I mean, James Harden is. I love James Harden, but that is him to a T. Is a good, consistent scorer who is at best a non-liability on defense.
Yeah, and I think what makes Harden an elite player is the fact that he can drop 40 on you at any night. It's not it's not like, oh, with Zach, he can hit 40. Like he has and he can, but it's not a consistent. You're not like, oh man, he's a guy that we have to stop or he's going to drop 40 on us. With Harden, you could try to stop him, he's still going to drop 40 on you if he wants to. That's, I think, the difference. And you look at Zach. I think he needs to get to the free throw line more and be more consistent on his shots.
Right. I'd love to see him getting those free points at the stripe versus trying to create a shot that may not be there on the outside.
Oh, I totally agree.
That's all my Bulls specific questions. I've got just, I guess, like, do you think the Bulls are playoff in the top 8, a play-in tournament team, or miss the playoffs entirely?
I mean, the conference is bad.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm never gonna write them off as no chance, but I wouldn't pencil them in for a playoffs altogether. I mean, watching them through the preseason, you saw some nights where they just looked like, man, this is a team that can probably, there's the upper echelon teams like the Bucks, that I don't think they can beat on a regular basis in a playoff series, but other than those upper echelon team, you're like, oh man, some of these nights you're like, they're a tough out in any other series in a playoff. But then you see them play another night, and you're just like, oof, who is this? Where is their consistent scoring? And I think that is their Achilles heel, is consistently being able to score. Is, Zach can be a really good scorer, but he can also just sort of fade away. Like that first game against the Rockets, he had 12 points, didn't shoot well. Kobe is an inefficient scorer sometimes, and he's very streaky. And then you don't have a lot of secondary scoring besides those two guys. And those nights, man, that's where constructing your starting lineup is going to be really key. And I think during the season, you're probably going to see not a standard starting rotation. You're going to see guys in and out of the starting lineup and varying, configurations, because there isn't a consistent scoring on this team, and you're going to have to manufacture some chemistry sometimes.
Yeah, Sean, to your point, you were saying that there's a lot of inconsistencies to work with, and to add on that, keep in mind that they got a pretty tough schedule to start the season out. Obviously, open against Atlanta, that's not that tough, but you're going to have some tough games. And I think at best this year, I see a team that at very most contends for the play-in. The conference is bad, yes, that is a good point, but I just don't think they're ready for like a legit playoff spot. Obviously not a top seed by any means, but if they do get into the playoffs and not the play-in, it would probably be because they're beating all the bad teams and the teams that are either on par with them or below them. But yeah, I think right now I'm going to put my range right now kind of at best in that play-in spot, because remember, there's going to be a lot of growing pains with a new regime, even if it's a very good regime and it's one that can help build a winner. It's hard to adjust when you've been playing in so many years of just crap, and now you got something new. Even if it's good, it's going to take some adjusting. It's going to take some preparation, and I think we're going to see a lot of growing pains early on.
Oh, I agree. I think that the play-in tournament is going to be kind of their ceiling, and I think they're going to get there by beating the teams that they're supposed to beat. I'm looking at this NBA season a lot like how you look at a baseball season. You figure you're going to win 50, lose 50, and what you do with those other games is what makes the difference. You look at your schedule, you're going to win a handful of them, you're going to lose a handful of them. You just got to make a difference on those ones that are toss-ups. And I think, I'm very high on this new regime, but it's not a fix-all. There's a lot of growing pains that are going to have to be gone through, and I understand that. That's going to be a challenge for this team, but I think if they make the play-in tournament, I think the morale boost that's going to be for these guys that have been there, that have pushed and persevered, I think that's going to lead to a next step. We're not going to be a Miami or a Toronto or a Milwaukee or a Boston, but I think there's going to be a conversation about the Bulls possibly being geared up to make a run, and I'm excited about that.
And, it's that first game. It's what is that? Wednesday night. It's
Wednesday
against Atlanta. I think that's going to be a fun game. I think this is two teams that are on the rise. Last season it would have been an oof game that nobody outside of Atlanta or Chicago had any interest in. But I think Atlanta is one of those teams that we've been saying for a while, like, oh, I think this team can turn around. I think this team can turn around. And I think this might be the year where they're much better. And I think they sort of mirror each other in that they are on the rise, and, they're going to have some pitfalls along the way, but I think both teams are going to finish this season strong, and it's going to be interesting to see who comes out more prepared in game one. Because I think this game one, if it would have been played at the end of the season, would be a much, much different game. And I just kind of want to see what the competitive nature is going to look like this early on.
Yeah, exactly. And now, is that game in Chicago?
Ooh, that I don't know.
Yes, it is.
The
It is
United
in
Center.
Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my last question is just predictions as far as, who do you think is going to win it all this year? What do you think the finals are going to be? Who do you think MVP is going to be? And I'll stop hijacking your show to talk basketball.
I'll take this one first. I think the Lakers are going to repeat. I think they're going to be really tough to beat. I don't see many other teams competing with that. And, I think this could be finally the year where Milwaukee breaks that barrier and gets to the finals. I still think that it's not going to be as easy as some people like to think. I think the Heat are going to be right up there too. I mean, look what they did last year, and they're trying to improve as well. As for MVP, that's a good question. I mean, the easy answer would be like a LeBron or something, but
voter fatigue.
Yeah, I'm gonna go somewhat bold. I'm gonna say Zion Williamson, because why not?
Wait, he got a vote, didn't he? I thought I heard he got a vote last year.
For real?
Yeah, he got many MVP votes as Ryan Tapera.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna go bold prediction there.
I was gonna say, I thought there was that one reporter that voted for him because he saw him on TV one time.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, if you're asking me, I'm gonna throw out the Nets.
Wow.
I'm gonna throw the Nets out there.
I can't.
And I'm gonna say MVP. I'm gonna say Giannis.
3 in a row?
Yeah.
Even after that max deal.
I think he's gonna do it. And
First 3-time MVP.
and I think
Larry
Steph
Bird.
wins comeback player of the year.
Yeah, I think that's yeah.
I'll lay that one up at the end. All right, what are your predictions?
I'm not gonna bug the. I think the Lakers. I mean, I think they're gonna repeat. I think they're gonna take it over Miami. I think we're gonna get a run back of last year's finals. I think that Miami's gonna beat the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think Milwaukee has addressed their biggest issue, which is Giannis is not a shooter, and how do you address that?
Yeah.
They don't. And I'm sorry, I go back to the Eastern Conference Finals last year when Giannis rotated off of Jimmy and then dodged questions about it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And when he goes the whole, I don't know why I'm getting this question. You're getting this question because you're the decoy, and you backed off of the best player on the other team who plays your position. So, I don't know. I think the way Miami came at it last year, if they've just got that dog-like mentality, I think they're going to be really, really fun to watch. And they're trying to get better, and you know that they are. For MVP, I think voter fatigue is going to be the detriment to LeBron. I mean, we've already seen it. LeBron hasn't won an MVP since, 2015? I don't think Giannis wins 3 in a row. I think it's going to be Luka.
I think he would be my runner-up.
I think he finished 3rd this past year, which I guess wins him the MVP according to Paul George. But I think he has a lot of talent. He's really loved by the media, and that goes a long way. And he's fun to watch, and I think that he is the next new thing that the league is going to look to. And so I think if he wins I would not be surprised if he wins the MVP this year. Melo's going to be Rookie of the Year, hands down. Because I think Golden State's going to be try to be good. So I don't know how much playing time Wiseman's going to get. Anthony Edwards up in Minnesota, I don't know how he's going to fit into that team. And I just don't see any of the rookies taken after Melo being on teams that make enough or draw enough attention to take votes away from him.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting this year, that's for sure.
It will be. It'll be a crazy season, but it'll be fun. I'm excited to finally get basketball back after having missed it for a month.
It'll be fun to have basketball back after having missed it for several years with the Bulls being terrible.
Exactly.
That's fair. As Alex says, I'm a league fan versus I'm a Bulls fan, but I'm one of those. Oh, basketball's on, cool. I'm going to sit in front of the TV and watch this for 3 hours. I was watching it at work the day that they came back with even the warm-up games in the bubble. It was great.
I'm a weirdo. Like, if in most sports, if my team is bad, my view on the league as a whole is bad. So, like, I can watch pretty much any just random hockey NHL game. Just put it on and watch it. But when the Bears are bad, like, I won't watch the playoffs. I'll casually tune in here and there, but like, meh. And NBA, I'm worse. If in years the Bears are bad, I'll just be like, I'm just gonna watch college football. Like, I'm tired of this. So like my interest peaks in valleys with how good my team is.
Yeah.
That's the old man get off my lawnness.
I'm just excited to actually be able to, have something to look forward to and check the Bulls highlights and hang my head in shame. Maybe we'll have less argument push-ups about the Bulls and who knows? Maybe we'll be looking for that 7th ring before too long. But
I can dream.
I just think
I would love that.
I just think, all right, so the Bulls, we have a brand new front office regime. We have the Cubs with, sort of a new front office regime. The White Sox.
Is it really new though?
I mean, sort of. I mean, it's a facelift.
Sort of.
I mean, it's a
It's
a tummy tuck. It's something. You have the White Sox are winning, and you have the Blackhawks did something. They did something all right. We'll rage about that.
I put us in cap hell. Give me a promotion because I'm Stan Bowman.
But I think this is all just turns the heat on as far as the Chicago fans go of the fire pace bandwagon, because like we just all grinding our gears in the same direction.
Yeah. I was gonna say it'll be interesting if this regime change for the Bulls maybe lights a fire under McCaskey's, but
It won't.
no, nothing will.
I just like the fire to stay alive.
The final NBA question is: does James Harden get traded?
Yes. I think so.
I want to say yes because I think the Rockets are just going to be tired of his shit.
So you're saying that there's a boot coming for his ass? An actual line from Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta's book about how you always need to be ready. You never know when a boot is coming for your ass.
See, when you say that, I just think of the Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns is having the auditions to be his heir, and then Bart's really bad that he turns that big lever and just that giant boot comes down, and then he turns it slightly again and it just kicks him.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with the Australia episode with the big boot.
Oh, I could go that route too.
Yeah, there's multiple big boots episodes of The Simpsons to fall back on.
Exactly.
Is there a Simpsons did it first, or when they plagiarized their own stuff?
There might be. I don't know if you guys watched South Park, but there was the episode of everything they did. Something like Simpsons did it. Simpsons did it.
Simpsons did it. And then Butters started seeing everybody in Simpsons yellow. Yeah, that was the semen episode.
Oh, gross.
Simpsons did
I'm king
it.
of the sea people. That's a good episode.
That is such a good episode. Take me away, sea people.
Sea people coming tomorrow.
I'm gonna out myself. I don't watch South Park.
Oh my goodness, it's so good.
Well, I do, so you could talk to me about it.
It's so good.
I'm gonna say that he probably gets traded, like I mentioned earlier, the Giannis re-signing. All those teams that were like, "Oh, we're not going to trade because we want to offer a max contract to Giannis," are suddenly sitting there with a bunch of cap space that they don't have plans for. And I think James Harden looks really good for that if you're a contender. But I don't think he's going to get traded before the season starts. I mean, we're 2 days away from that.
Yeah, I don't see that either. But eventually I could see it.
Right. And I feel like my gut still says it's going to be Philly because of Daryl Morey and because of the fact that Ben Simmons' name has already been floated out there. That's going to create so many chemistry issues if he doesn't get traded. I don't know if he would want to stay there.
You know, it's funny. As much as I would love for there to be options in free agency when the Bulls have a lot of money, the fact that there isn't makes me laugh at the Knicks that much more, because that's been their whole thing for years. Like, well, you know what? Everybody wants to play in New York because we're the best and we've got all the money and we can get 2 max contracts, and everyone's just like, yeah, it's gonna be a no from me, dog. And then New York just sits there, twiddling their thumbs, sitting with their teeth in their mouth for another year.
But they don't even offer a max. They don't feel that Kevin Durant is worth offering a max contract to, which I get the injury aspect, but it's still Kevin Durant. And this was the year after we just saw like an 80% Kawhi Leonard carry, granted not alone, but bring a championship to Toronto. And the fact that the Knicks were like, no, we're good. We don't want to offer a max deal to Kevin Durant. He's only, one of the top 5 players in the NBA. We're good. Like, it's like, what did you have that cap space for then, if not that?
I mean, that is the worst ownership in sports, possibly. So
Yeah, it really is.
when one of your favorite all time fan favorite players, you have them arrested at the stadium, not a good look.
No, and the fact that everyone in the league is like, you were in the wrong. Like, I almost want to meet someone who's a fan of what I consider like the worst ownerships in each sport. I only know like for sure because these are the only two that I follow close enough to know this. But like, is there a Cowboys and a Knicks fan?
Oh, I'm sure there is.
One, what's wrong with you? Two, are you okay? And 3, why?
I just
they were
like
probably in the 90s.
I just like
Probably
that.
in the 90s.
I like that everybody universally is like, yeah, Dolan's the worst owner. And the guy with the super racist team name in Washington is like, not me this time.
You mean the guy that knows what his next team name is, but was like, oh, if I just go Washington football team, I can sell more merch for a year.
He's going to pick a stupid name, isn't he? It's a given. He's going to pick something stupid.
It's going to be pigskin.
Is it?
It's going to be pigskins, and he's just going to paint over the racist part.
The logo will be the same thing, just the pig head.
And the thing is that he won't want to pay somebody to do the design, so it'll be like MS Paint, and it'll be the Redskins logo, and they'll just put like they'll copy and paste a football over it with the jagged edges from the pixels just over them.
And you can see the Getty Images logo just kind of crossing over it.
It's just like he took the pencil tool and covered up the watermarks.
Ugh. It's not even going to be MS Paint. It's going to be a Snapchat filter.
Yeah, there you go.
He doesn't. Does he know Snapchat? He's like, I don't know what these things are. He's like, I want it to look kind of like cool graphics, like in my favorite game, Minecraft.
I was going to go with ET for the Atari.
Oh God, the landfill.
You know what's funny is I always thought that was an urban legend until they actually dug up the plot of land where they were.
Very real. That was very real.
Like, I don't know how old you are, John, but I was a kid in the Atari age, and there was not a good game for Atari. They were all terrible, and E.T. was one of the worst. Like, there was some just terrible games. There was one where you had to go through a maze, but it was in the dark, so it was just a black screen with your character on there, and you couldn't see anything. So you're trying to go through a maze and where you can't see anything. It's just like your character was a blip on a screen. It's all black, and you're just like, oh, that's not the way. Oh, that's not the way. And if you get lost, there's no way to backtrack and figure out where you were. There's some terrible games.
I sometimes forget that there was video games that were made by people who had never played video games before. So like now everything's referential to other things, and like you can tell that there's love poured into it. And there was a time where people were like, oh nope, you just put the ones here, the zeros here, and you hope it doesn't break.
Pretty much. That's pretty much how it worked. And like this, there was just so many bad Atari games, but they were so cool because like that was the first thing ever. Like, you know, there was a tennis game where it's just like a paddle and a white block paddle.
Oh, good old Pong.
It was, yeah, but it was like the knockoff Pong. And it was called tennis. And you just did that back, except it was a net.
Hang?
It's just called tennis, and they put a net there, and it was Pong with a net. That was a green line. It was so bad. And there was a game like there. You might not know this movie. There was a movie called Krull. It was an 80s movie. And like the key thing was there was a guy, the hero had this blade thing that he would throw. It was kind of like a boomerang with blades. And they made a game for it. And essentially you're trying to stop the bad guys from kidnapping the princess. But the thing is, it was impossible. Like they literally they built the game to be impossible, because if you defended her, they would just keep sending more people until eventually there was so many people you couldn't stop it, and then you're like, oh, you didn't do it, and you're like, what the hell? There's no end. It's not like, oh, they're sending 10 waves in and you have to beat. No. If you beat 10 waves, they were sending an 11th and a 12th and a 13th until eventually they just sent so many people, and you're just like, how do you win this? How?
Jeez.
There was just so many bad games for that system that it was infuriating. Like in my house, there was a lot of throwing of the controllers, the joystick.
Nah.
Family of angry people with a buggy system, which is not a good recipe.
No, not a great recipe. My brothers and my younger brother and I used to just turn the console off on each other if we were losing. But
I think I've told the story on here before, but I remember on the Nintendo, I had Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and I finally did everything. I read the Nintendo Power magazine, and because we couldn't just watch YouTube videos how to beat things because it didn't exist. But I read every article in like the video game magazines and how to beat these guys and talk to friends and got the tricks and finally beat Mike Tyson. And I was like, we lived at my grandma's house at the time, and there wasn't very many outlets. So the outlet for the TV, there was like TV and something else, and then you had to plug in the Nintendo to another outlet on the side of the wall, so the cord ran across the room basically, and I was jumping up and down going, I beat him. My sister came running in and tripped over the cord and unplugged it, and I was devastated because Mike Tyson was real hard to beat.
Yeah, in college, Alex, you probably remember this. I threw a perfect game. I'll name him. It's fine. He's not going to listen to it. And if he wants to fight me on it, he can fight me. Against our friend Zach on MLB The Show. And before the final out gets recorded, I'm under the icon. I'm about to, 27 up, 27 down. And he turns the PlayStation off and punches me in the arm. He goes, that's for throwing a perfect game against me.
I remember that very well.
So I didn't get the official perfect game.
As somebody that has no vested interest in this, no offense, that's funny, but if I was involved in it, I would have some sort of murderous rage. Like, I just would not. I'd have been so mad. But as a complete outsider, if you just had some random YouTube video with this, I would have laughed so hard I probably would have burst a spleen.
Right? It is so funny to me, like now, years later. I don't even think I was mad at the time. I got him back. I ripped one on his head later, so.
I remember I had a younger cousin, and my one cousin and I were the two oldest, and we had a younger cousin who was, I don't know, maybe 4 years younger, 3 years younger, and he would always want to play, and we were like, no. And finally we're like, you can play, but we give him a controller that wasn't plugged in, and we would just play, and he thought he was playing, and he was perfectly fine, and we were happy because he would just shut up, but we would just the old classic move of giving him an unplugged in controller.
Yeah. Next time I want to play Injustice, I'm going to do that to my wife because she beats me at that every single time we play. It annoys me because I try to do the combos, play the way you're supposed to play, Meanwhile, she's just over there violently pressing the quick strike button.
You know what's funny is we have a similar situation in my house. So we used to settle disputes in my house with playing. So for the Xbox, there used to be. So 1 year Burger King put out 3 video games, and one is essentially a ripoff of Mario Kart, and it's called Pocket Bike Racer, and you can play as the Burger King.
I know that game.
Yeah, or the chicken, or Brooke Burke for some reason. But you ride on these little tiny motorcycles through, different things, and there's, you got little tricks you can do, kind of like Mario Kart. We would play that, and I'm 100% of the time a beat her. She's never beat me, so it was always good. But we just got the Oculus, the virtual reality gaming.
Oh yeah,
and we've been playing Beat Saber. And at first, I was crushing her because I played sports growing up, so it was a lot of hand-eye coordination. I could win the level without it, stopping because I was terrible. But now that she's figured out the levels, I can't beat her because she gets some sort of style points that I can't figure. She flails wildly, and I'm very controlled with the motions, and I can't figure. I'm like, I got a higher percentage of her. I hit more of the blocks and less misses, and I'm like, why is she kicking the crap out of me? And I'm looking online, and it's like, oh, you have to hit it at a certain angle to get the most points, and I'm just like, I can't. Now I just can't beat her. I'm like, this sucks. It sucks losing. I have to be there when she's playing.
Being calm, but rage building in you.
I have to stand there while she's playing because I don't know if you've ever played the virtual reality games, but you're so in it, you don't know where you are in, you are know where you are in the game, but in the real room, you have no idea where you are. And she's bumping into the walls and, so I have to be there to spot her so she doesn't knock the ceiling fan and I'm like, man, she's kicking the crap out of me, and I'm the one that's got to make sure she doesn't walk into the bathroom or something. It's like, what are you doing here? One time I was tending to my daughter, and she almost punched a hole in the wall because she was flailing so hard, and I was like, jeez. And she's like, I'm in the zone, so I had to push her back into the center of the room.
That's funny.
Yeah, a buddy of mine was I'd never played any like those things before, but the new one came out, and he was like, I was asking about it, and he's like, oh, well, I get the new one on this day. He's like, if you want to buy my old one, for pretty cheap. I was like, well, yeah, that's fine. So I bought it, and I was like, oh, this is a blast, and now we play all the time with the stupid Beat Saber. It's been my COVID-19 shutdown exercise.
Get it how you can get it. Meanwhile, mine is purely the thumbs. I've perfected my shot on 2K, so doing great there.
Well, John, I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
thanks for coming on.
This was a blast.
Come on, man.
Been great. Happy to hop on, and looking forward to. I was a little bummed. I woke up this morning and there wasn't the new episode in my feed, and then I remembered that we're recording tonight. So I realized why there wasn't a new episode, but I always look forward to it when it comes out. Looking forward to hearing what you guys got to say about everything else. So it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been fun having you, man. Thanks for coming.
All right, have a good night.
You guys have a Merry Christmas.
You too.
Thank you. Bear down.
All right, that was great having John on there. I mean, while we brought this up, should we just jump into this whole fiasco of front office shuffling for the Blackhawks?
Yeah, we might as well. I mean, considering hockey is going to be back in less than a month, and The Blackhawks are in a weird position. I think it's irrelevant talking about.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen the new divisions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a stupid division we're in. I don't like it, but
Gonna get our butts kicked.
yeah, at least our wins consistently should be against the Red Wings.
Yeah, it's the one bright spot, because you're going to be playing in a division with the defending Stanley Cup champs and the defending conference champs.
Yeah, so it's going to be brutal, and this is going to be a brutal team, and it doesn't seem like Stan is going anywhere.
He was promoted, for goodness sake. Hey, let's solve our what is it with Chicago sports teams and standing for these GMs saying, you know what, instead of making big changes, let's just reshuffle everything and hope it works?
I mean, listen, so I heard the explanation. Well, we're trying to align the titles and have Stan be running the hockey operations, and nothing's really changing, and it's just a title change. No, it's not. It's a vote of confidence. If that guy is truly on the hot seat, of which he very well should be, is if he's on the hot seat, you go, you know what? I'm not ready to align these titles yet. Let's hold off on that until we got the guy in place that we want to do it. But you said, no, we are going to give him this elevated title, and I'm sure some sort of financial compensation to go along with it. That is a vote of confidence for what the man, where he is in his plan of making this team a contender again.
And I would like to reiterate this. This Blackhawks team is in cap hell right now. They are in like one of the worst cap situations you can think of. And honestly, we're here because of the contract Stan Bowman gave out. Look, there are some moves that I think got maybe a little too much criticism, some that were hindsight 2020. But the fact is, we've been put in a really bad financial situation cap-wise. And we've seen Stan Bowman trade away, I think, too many guys, for reclamation projects, or trading away some of those first round picks and bringing in defensemen that, he can score. He's big and slow moving, but he gets. I just feel like what I'm trying to say is I feel like the style of hockey has passed him by, and the Blackhawks can't keep up with it, because Kane and Taze are still in their primes, and I would even argue Keith is still pretty good, but the overall dynamic of the Blackhawks doesn't really fit with the modern game. It's evolved to the speed game, and they can't keep up with that. You're seeing poor defense, and you've had Crawford to bail you out for a while now, but you're not even going to have that. You're basically going to have AHL goaltending. So you better hope that this next cream of the crop is what I was thinking of. This next handful of prospects that you have can develop and be something. You're going to need it. You're going to need Boqvist, Ian Mitchell, Kirby Dach, all these guys. You're going to need them to hit if you want to be competitive moving forward, because you can't rely on bringing people in because there's no cap room.
I mean, you're right. And it's when the Blackhawks were winning titles, they were the ones that were introducing pretty much this new style of fast hockey compared to the bigger, slower teams. And it was going swimmingly. And everybody has not only caught up, but surpassed us. And now we're the old, slow team. And it sucks to be on the receiving end of something like that. I don't know if we're in cap hell. We're slowly working. I think we were in cap hell. I think we're on the border of cap purgatory, possibly.
You're not making it sound much better.
It's
You can agree, though, it's still not ideal.
it is
where
not.
we're at.
It is not good. I mean, here's the thing: if somehow, some way, Brent Seabrook has to medically hang it up, then you're like, all right, we're not terrible anymore. That's an albatross contract. 4 more years of pretty much $7 million a year.
Yeah, and it sucks. It sucks to think about that with a guy who was absolutely a key factor in 3 championships in this city. It sucks, but you know what? It's a lot of money, and he's past his prime.
You are paying
old and slow and not producing.
You're paying top pairing money for a bottom 6 defender at best.
Yeah. Again, it sucks to say about such a guy that has done so much for you, such a really clutch player in his heyday, but yeah, right now, I mean, he's been past his prime the past 3-4 years now, unfortunately.
I mean, the thing is, just because you were a great player on a team doesn't mean you still have to pay them to be on the team. He's 35 years old.
He's got a lot of miles on him.
He's an old 35. He's an old 35. And you've got him till he's 30, almost 40. So that's tough. I mean, Stan stands behind that. And it's just tough to swallow when we're not making a ton of moves that are paying off, and we're going to see our team get sliced up because our defense is still not very good. And a year ago, we had Corey Crawford and Robin Leonard as our goalie tandem.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to reiterate. Corey Crawford and Robin Leonard were our goalie tandem a year ago. And now we did the numbers, but essentially the number of starts that they have in the NHL is not too far off from Corey Crawford's number of playoff starts.
Yeah, you got Malcolm Subban and you have Colin Delia, both with very little experience. This will really be the first time that either of them get an extensive chance, especially for Malcolm Subban. And Colin Delia, we saw that taste of him 2 years ago, and you saw both promise and issues. You'd see him make a great save on one play and then let in a super soft goal the next play. Eventually got sent back down to Rockford, and it's the Blackhawks have had a history of some late blooming goaltenders. So, maybe one of them can prove you something, but right now you're going with 2 unprovens with a shaky defense, who is also trying to groom kids. And look, when you have some kids coming up into the defense, there's going to be some growing pains there too. I mean, overall, what I'm trying to say is your defense is probably not going to be good this year. And you're going to have inexperienced goaltending on top of that. And like I said before, you are going to be in a division with the defending Stanley Cup champs, a powerhouse, the defending conference champs, a powerhouse, and a few other notable teams. Like, Columbus can put some goals on you. They're not great, but, they can score. So, yeah, that's that could get ugly.
Yeah, I'm not happy. And I just, going back to Stan Bowman is, I would say that he is much closer to being deserved to be fired than deserved to be promoted. And
I agree.
And even if this is just a title alignment, which I can understand at some level, the optics of it are pretty bad.
Yeah. And, it's kind of a shame because the Blackhawks organization, I think, has done a lot of good things this year. You've promoted some women in some high roles, their new business operation. Forgive me, what's her name?
I'm
I'd have to look. But you get brought in Kendall Coyne.
Yeah.
You know, that was
Yep.
that was a great move. You know, she's a star of women's hockey here in the United States, a very, very famous athlete, and it's cool to have her within the organization. And obviously, you have Danny Wirtz, Rocky's son, being involved in everything. So, you know, there were some good things that happened in the organization, but, you know, you're promoting your general manager who has made some controversial moves, signed some really bad contracts, and kind of put you in a hole. And look, I will give him some credit for maintaining those teams in 2013 and 2015, but I mean, we really all know that dynasty was pretty much built by Dale Talon. So, just saying.
Yeah, you know, he has done some good things, but like I can't think of any front office head, general manager in any sport that has been 100% bad job. So, you know, through the press conference of, you know, promoting the sound bites of promoting him and defending it, they're like, well, you got to look at all the good things he did too. It's like, well, you know, if you only look at the good things people did, is nobody would ever be fired in sports, and you'd have some teams that were eternally bottom feeders. It's a what have you done for me lately league, and this team is a bottom feeder.
Yeah, I know. It sucks. It really does. I mean, it doesn't hurt nearly as much when you at least saw them win a couple of championships in recent years, but it still does kind of suck. Because you know that to get back to being a cup contender, there's going to have to be a lot of changes. There's going to have to be a lot of adapting. And, you know, another thing, too, is let's keep in mind, it looks like Jeremy Colleton's going to be here. I don't think there's going to be a coaching change unless things really, really get bad. And you look around the league, not only with coaches, but with general managers and front office people. It's a rotating door. I mean, it doesn't take a lot for teams to make changes. And the Blackhawks, if a number of organizations were in this position, I guarantee you they would have made a GM change by now.
Probably.
I mean, look how much less that other GMs and coaches have been fired for than compared to the Blackhawks the past 5 years.
It's just really frustrating. Is I don't know what the plan for this team is. I don't know what the vision is.
The vision is, to me, rebuild while trying to contend. That's how I see it.
But it's not working.
I'm not saying it's a good vision or it's effective. I'm saying I think that's how they see it.
That's just kind of infuriating.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
we're trying to get, you know, improve, you know, facelift our team, but you're sucking. Your team sucks. And how are you supposed to rebuild on the fly when your team's not good? Like, what are you building off of?
If you had more cap room, if maybe you didn't have as many bad contracts, it would be one thing. Maybe if you had more tradable players, it'd be another thing, but that's not the case.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Yep.
I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about here?
No, I think I've said my piece.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn app, Google Play, Spotify. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.